I love my mornings. I'm outside right now. The magnolia trees are blossoming. The flowers are as big as your friggin' head. And they smell so gorgeous and fragrant. And I've got my like special mug that my girlfriend got me. My sunflower mug for my magic mind morning. I just am still so drawn to this drink that makes me feel so alive. I just came off two VIP PSIs and then a full day of work. I've got a full day of work today, and I just love that this gives me energy to calmly, with focus and aliveness and like strong immunity and all that, begin the day. You're about to be introduced to part one of an incredible conversation that I got to have with return guest John Wineland. And like, I love being not like a guru. I love being like a role model, because I think like a role model is human, and a role model is always growing in real time what it's like to be that pioneer, that one who's willing to risk and go first and fall down and learn and get back up and fail and recommit, as John says. So we start the interview. You'll see, and I introduce the title, and it's around one of my Alana Pratt method processes, Theater of Redemption, where we really talk about going from like a closed heart anger, pointed anger, to like an open-hearted fierce love. And so right away John's like, well, can I even go deeper there? Like, that took like 10 seconds and we're already having a complete deep dive. That anger is often a protection, yes, and underneath it is often anguish, as we move into the feelings and the anger mixed with grief that's underneath that protectionary anger. And I'm like, yeah, if I go under my anger, I instantly start sobbing. Definitely there's disappointment most of the time for me. Sometimes fear is underneath it as well. But you'll see in this interview how quickly we deep dive, how quickly we get to the heart of the matter, how quickly we get vulnerable, and what a blessing it is to be able to have these conversations for you about what's really going on in his life, what was really going on in my life, and how safe it is when we're safe within ourselves to then offer that, risk that, open that, give that, connect with that, the sameness, the vulnerabilities, the transparency with another. For me, how rich that is, what a gift that is. He's an extraordinary man. So you're going to learn so much in this incredible podcast. So here we go with part one, diving in with the amazing John Wineland. Welcome to Intimate Conversations. Become the one. Intimacy is an inside job. Hello, delicious people. Welcome to another episode of Intimate Conversations. Here we are in season 12, Become the One. And I have the distinct honor and pleasure of welcoming back a return guest, the incredible John Wineland. And we're going to nerd out with you and with each other for the next hour or so, talking about turning anger into fierce love. One of my Alana Pratt method processes, the Theater of Redemption, unbeknownst to me, has been one of the most powerful processes because there's so much intensity of this anger. And when we keep our hearts closed, we turn it against ourselves or against another. But when we're able to open our hearts, it shifts. There's like an alchemy. And all of a sudden that ferociousness comes through as fierce love. And I can't think of anybody better to talk to other than John about this. So let me tell you more about him if you haven't met him already, and then we'll get away to the races. So he's been an author, teacher, and speaker who has been guiding both men and women in the realms of life purpose, relational communication, spiritual intimacy, sexual intimacy, and embodiment. And he brings a multifaceted approach, which is both energetic and highly practical, to his workshops and experiential coaching sessions. So his embodiment-driven teachings draw from not only over 30 years experience of his own Buddhist meditative practice, but from 13 years of intensive study and practice in yogic intimacy. And he draws from the deep lineages of Vajrayana, Tantra, Kundalini Yoga, Taoist, and Iron Shirt Qigong traditions. And he seeks to create a profound experience for men and women longing to express their deepest desires with open, fierce, and loving hearts. And back in 2022,
I mean, the book is almost falling apart. But I've been reading it so many times from the core, both on audio. I recommend that as well. And also his latest podcast, the Embodiment Relationship Experience, episode 2 just came out. And that's also a platform if you want to dive in and learn more about his practices. And he also has a teacher training that yours truly might be applying for, because I really respect you, John, over all these years. I think I first learned about you when I started doing David Data's work, Warrior Sage work with Satyen and Suzanne Raja.
Mhm.
Had you on the show. And just one thing across the board, you're fucking real. You aren't just a guru teacher. You share the good, the bad, the ugly. You share the pain. You share the whole thing, and it really makes me trust you, respect you, and it helps me open and be vulnerable with my community as well. Um, so before we get off talking about turning anger into fierce love, it's been almost like a decade or so since we connected last. What would you say has been maybe the most meaningful unfolding of your life since we spoke last?
Mm, mm. Well, without a doubt, it was the death of my daughter, right?
Yeah, yeah.
My daughter Claire was, lived for 21 years, and she was, critically ill most of that time.
Mm.
Uh, but in 2018, she passed away, and my just unfolding of grief and all of the life lessons and kind of allowing my process to happen over the last few years has been very deep initiation for me, I guess.
Yeah,
Because even though we knew that Clara was going to pass at some point, she wasn't going to live as long as most normal humans do. It
yeah,
still didn't make it any easier, and it's still been a long, deep journey. I was just on the mountain this morning, hit by a, wave of grief around it, and so without a doubt, losing my daughter has been the biggest experience, since we talked last.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Um, Anger, grief, absolutely. How did you integrate the anger around why this is
Mm.
not fair? This doesn't make any sense. Fuck you, God. Like what what were some of the waves you
Yeah.
went through?
Well, I guess I would like to zoom out to talk about anger, my approach to anger, right?
Yeah.
It might differ a little bit from yours, but I always see anger as sort of a surface emotion. It's easier for us
Mm.
to get to, right? Anger is one of the easiest emotions to get to. What I often want to encourage people to get to is anguish,
Ah,
which I see, and this is just my personal definition, as this really beautiful combination of anger and grief.
nice. Yeah.
Right. So when, oftentimes when I'm working with people and I'll put them in front of each other and ask them to clear whatever's, blocking them from having their heart open in love,
Yeah.
uh, anger will be the first thing to come out.
Yeah.
But if they stay with it, and like you said, if they can find a way to literally feel their own hearts while
Mm.
being angry, so they drop. It's like
Mm.
they drop deeper into their hearts, and what we see is this sort of anguish of, it's the why.
Mm.
Why did you leave? Why did you hurt me? Why did you betray me? Why blah 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 blah, right?
Yeah.
So anguish is I would consider the deeper emotion,
Uh-huh.
usually just below the surface of anger. And so with Claire, I had many years, because she was sick for so long, there was 21 years of anguish of my daughter is sick. She has to spend, 3 or 4 months out of the year in the hospital, a few near-death experiences,
Mm.
having to watch her suffer. What I was faced with was the anguish of that experience. And so I had men,
Mm.
I was part of a men's group for many years, 25 years, where I would show up, and we'd have lunch together almost every day, like many
Mm.
times a week, 3, 4 times a week. And so there'd be 50, 60 of us. And I
Wow.
would come straight from the hospital and just be completely torn up
Mm.
and then sit down in front of these guys and just wail and
Mm.
just let it out. And
Mm.
because I felt like I had such a deep community to witness me, it allowed me to just drop into this anguish and be held in this anguish. And
Mm.
I think what happens is it when we're witnessed in our anguish, right? More so than our anger, but when we're really witnessed in that deeper, juicier, more heartfelt emotion,
Yeah.
we transmute it, right? I
Right.
wouldn't say it gets transmuted into fierce love, but it gets transmuted into fullness,
Mm.
right? It becomes a fullness, like a really beautiful experience of humanity that
Yeah.
is not anger's like this thing that usually gets projected out like
Right.
a fire hose
Yeah.
oftentimes, right? It transmutes from that, which is often if you're in the path of that fire hose, it's very painful,
Yeah.
into fullness, like a wider experience that other people can be a part of.
Mm.
Someone's angry with us, it tends to be hard to be with them
Yeah.
because we're, dodging, we're
Yeah.
dodging it, right? But
Mm.
when they're full with anguish and grief, it's like an invitation, and
Oh.
yeah, it's easier to dive into, right?
Yeah.
It's why yogically we would talk about it being wide,
Yeah.
you know, opening wide as versus projecting out.
Yeah.
And we open wide as, or we're full with, then we're an invitation to be loved and to be felt and,
Mm.
receive love, all that stuff.
Mm. Mm. Amazing.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm so sorry for your loss,
Thank you.
and simultaneously so grateful for the way you teach about it, and
Beautiful.
continue to invite us
Yeah.
to be with our anguish.
Yeah.
Um, if we bring this dynamic of, I was listening to your first podcast, the three pillars, and the second one, devotion to love, being one of the more challenging ones. And
Yeah.
how do we love the other's nervous system home when
Right.
they're angry?
Yeah.
And so if you could shift into what does that look like in a partnership when you're fucking pissed? And do
Yeah.
you take that pissed anger to your women's group, to your men's group, to your
Yeah.
meditation, and then present anguish? Or do you actually guide couples into expressing the anger in the moment, in the
Yeah.
presence of one another, into anguish, into truth? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. No, it's so tricky, right? Especially if that anger is directed at you as the
Yeah.
partner.
Yeah.
So there's a few ways to work with this. And I always like to work yogically
Uh-huh.
and therapeutically, right? Because they're two
Okay.
different modalities, right? Yogically is about opening the heart and
Mhm.
opening the body in whatever experience we're having. So I just gave an example of widening is anguish versus projecting as anger.
Yep.
So what I will often do with couples is I'll have them start with the anger, but I'll
Mhm.
actually have them be angry wide.
Mm, mm,
Like be angry, be open as your anger, like
right.
feel your anger out to the tips of your fingers, right? Versus, projecting it out, and also feel your heart.
Mm-hmm.
So anger that is disconnected from our hearts, and this is true for men and women, whoever, right? Can be abusive, right? To
Totally.
be in the stream of that can be
Yep.
very difficult. But anger that is heart connected, even very intense anger that is heart connected, tends to involve anguish, right? And so it's more relatable.
Yeah.
But B, it's just easier to be with. It's easier for the other person to receive and to witness.
Totally.
And so when I work with couples, it's normally how do I, keep them. Something I'll do in workshops, for example, is I'll say, all right, I'll work with the women and I'll say, all right, bring him your anger.
Yeah.
I'll have the man just raise his hand when he feels her disconnected from her heart.
Oh.
And she has to kind of slow down a little bit, right?
Uh-huh.
Which they just want to, right? But
Yeah.
it takes discipline.
Ollie.
Yeah, I just want to be collie and cut off his fucking head.
Right.
But if you want to live with him for the next 20 years, he'll need his head.
Yeah.
So the men will raise their hands, the women will kind of literally search to find their heart, like
Mm,
really feel the weight of it, feel the
mm,
texture of it, and then express from there. And
mm.
what happens is they're not as it's not as explosive an
Yeah.
expression, but it's a richer expression.
Mm.
And so it's like a deeper part of the ocean is coming up rather than
Mhm.
just a storm on the surface of the ocean, if that makes any sense.
Totally.
And yeah, and so to train ourselves in partnership to stay connected to our heart
Mm.
and to drop into the deeper vulnerability, because usually anger is, again, anger is the protector.
Right. Right.
Here's the protector, right? And so what's it protecting?
Mm.
That's the real question. What I would say a great exploration for couples who are dealing with anger is to ask themselves. So let's say, I'm your man and I'm coming to you and I'm like, I'm noticing I'm having a lot of anger
Yeah.
around that thing you did,
Yeah.
right? That thing that hurt me, or that thing that I felt was disrespectful, or whatever men get upset about, right? Normally those two things. And so I'm aware. I'm using my own masculine to use my practice here. I'm aware
Yeah.
that I'm
Yeah.
right. And so I'm bringing my awareness to my anger, not just unaware, unconsciously dumping it on you, right? I'm angry. I'm charged about this. I want to own that. I want to own it, because the minute
Mm-hmm.
we own our anger, we diffuse the situation a little bit. Our
Mm-hmm.
anger is unowned, then it's often weaponized against the other. So I
Right.
would say, I'm angry. I want to own that I'm angry at that thing that you did.
Yeah.
And if I ask myself, what am I protecting with my anger? It would be, the hurt of that comment that felt disrespectful, and it hurt me.
Yeah.
And so just by kind of asking that question, what am I protecting? What's my anger protecting? We'll find the deeper cut, and then we give people a chance to be with us in a more vulnerable way. And
Mm.
usually that works out much better. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is great. This ability to widen, not turn it inward and not point it outward, but to
Yeah.
expand. So important and helps you stay in your body.
Yeah.
And for me, if it's underneath it, like, are you still connected to your heart? I would just start bawling. Like that would just go straight into like that. I'm hurt.
Most people do, which is
Yeah.
why it's much more effective. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember in your book, one of the chapters that was quite fascinating to me, um, embrace feminine criticism as a way to gauge how conscious you are. So when she's angry
Yeah.
and to have a different point of view about that, how would a man would he just say like your practice? Or I won't even put words in your mouth. So how would a man listening to this, and she's angry, but he's willing to have a new point of view, that this is actually helping me be even more conscious as a man, but this is too much. This is too much. She's crazy. Like, how would we
Yeah.
help? How would we help them?
Well, okay, so let me zoom out a little bit and debunk a myth that
Okay.
kind of irks me, right?
Yeah.
And part of my teacher was David Data for many, many years, right? And one of
Yeah.
the beautiful contributions that David has made is teaching men how to be with the feminine storm, right?
Yeah.
How to be with the feminine storm. And what's happened over the years is that's been a bit twisted
Okay.
by women in particular, that they can just storm with
Right.
no awareness or no connection to their heart, and that
Or ownership.
or any awareness of owning their stuff, and that the
Right.
man should just sit there and take it.
Right.
And that's not that
That's
is
not the
not
teaching.
the practice. No, no, no. No, the practice is for you to bring the storm through your heart, right? To bring the storm through your heart,
Right.
right? In a way that he can be with, because no matter how practiced your man might be, I'm pretty practiced, right? And I
Yeah.
still have limitations. So if my partner came to me and, and I've had this experience in relationship even recently, right? And I don't feel her heart and it's just coming at me as sharpness,
Yeah.
then at some point I'm not going to want to be with that.
Yeah.
I don't feel that's my role to just be wound dumped. So the
Yeah.
difference between bringing a storm through your heart and then wound dumping is what we've talked about. It's awareness of your own emotional body. It's a connection to your physical heart. and it's a, you know, it's a staying in your body. So to get to your question, what a man can do to help a woman express her anger is there's a few ways he could go about it. He could say, my love, I can sense that I'm sensing, I'm making up any of those things, right? That you're angry at me. Is that true? And you know, she'll say, yes, as a matter of fact, I'm pissed at you for da 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 da. And he said, all right, so let me just, you know, let me prepare myself to receive it. Right? Okay, tell me, what are you angry? And she might go, well, when you did this, it hurt me, and this, and then you did this, and then you did this. And he can just be with it if he's prepared. It's the problem that men run into. It's the ambush of anger that almost men across the board have trouble with. But if you give them a heads up, and I'm talking to the feminine partner now, you give them a heads up, I'm angry and I'm angry and I'm hurt and I need to share something with you soon. That gives him a chance to like ground and breathe and drop into his heart, and gives him a chance to like to hold her. But if it comes out of left field and he's focused on something else, you know, because he's single-mindedly focused, right? He's single-mindedly focused, and then all of a sudden here's this bear coming from the, you know, side of the woods. He'll defend. So there's an art to, and how this wraps to this devotion to love is the more that both the masculine partner and the feminine partner are aware of how to bring their upset while making love the primary objective, not self. Right. I need to do this. I need to defend. I need to withdraw. I need to whatever it is. And once love is more primary than self, we'll come at it differently. We'll set partners up to win. We'll create containers for our upset. We'll use responsible language. We'll feel our own hearts. We won't just blast them with it. So when we're devotional to love, it means that we're owning our upset in a way that our partner's nervous system can stay out of sympathetic, right, into a parasympathetic response and stay with us. And that will promote love versus one partner or the other being right. It's hard. It's hard.
It's friggin' hard.
It's the hardest thing.
I'm going through a conscious uncoupling as I'm recording this interview with you. And I was unable to be this with my partner. I was unable to communicate in any way that didn't elicit this defensiveness. And granted, he hadn't done any of this work that we do, but I didn't think that, well, I'm an intimacy expert, I can handle this. But I really do believe you need partners who both do the work, who are both learning how to regulate their own nervous system, committed to learning how to communicate in this way, committed that, yes, we're together, but we're actually together I'm here for your enlightenment and you're here for mine. We're both devoted to love itself. Right. What would you say to people beginning to date or beginning to be in a relationship where they're bumping like this and like, oh, we forgot to be devoted to love? Like, what the hell does that mean? How do we do that? How do we make up for all of that? And, you know, and I've got all these unresolved resentments, and sure, I'll be devoted to love until he's a jerk again. Or, you know, what are some advice you give people?
Right. Well, let me, I'm going to push back on one point you made. And that is, there's always going to be one partner or the other who's more advanced in their practice, right?
There has to be,
there always will be, right? I mean, maybe there's the fucking unicorn couples that come together fully, you know, but those are rare.
Probably not,
Very rare. Most of the time, you know, and if you're watching this podcast, chances are it's you that's more advanced. And so whoever the more advanced practitioner is, they're responsible
for going first.
Bringing, you know, me too. And this is the practice that more than any other practice is filled with failure and recommit.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? To fail, I had a therapist that I really respect say to me the other day that secure attachment happens in the repair, not
Mm,
in the lack
mm,
of rupture. And
Tell me
so,
more.
yeah, so if were a jerk to your partner or you wound dumped on him, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then you went back and then you caught it because you're just human, right? You're like, oh shit, that was me. I wasn't connected to my heart. That was me uh looking at the past. That was me not owning the anger of my childhood. That was me, like whatever we do, right? We do
yeah.
all these things and you're aware of it. And you
Mm,
go back 10, 15, 30 minutes a day later, and you're like, look, um, I was angry. I didn't own my anger. I didn't bring it to you in a responsible way. I ambushed you with it, maybe.
yeah,
I didn't set you up to win, to hold it.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I didn't want to hear about your experience, which is a big one, big one.
yeah.
I didn't want to hear about your experience. I was just all caught up in telling you mine. And that wasn't fair to you. I,
Mm,
I, I didn't set you up to win. And I should do better.
mm,
And here would be the advanced practice. I've done that before.
yeah.
It's a pattern, right? I know that it's a pattern of how I get reactive when I feel, dismissed by you, or when I make up that you're dismissing me or not taking me seriously or not giving me the attention that I want. It's a pattern. I recognize it's a pattern. And I recognize that when I go into that pattern, I make it impossible for you to win
Mm,
because the masculine's always looking to win. And
right.
winning means you're happy.
Yes.
Winning
Yes.
to a man who loves you means that
Mhm.
you're happy.
Yeah.
Just saying that to the women out there, right? Because, he wants you to be happy. And
Hmm.
that's so if you help him win, he'll feel great, and he'll probably be much more available to hear your upset. And
Mm,
then he can do what I talk about in the book. He can say, okay, where is she right? Where was I dismissive? Where was
mm,
I? Da 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 da. And if you set him up to win at the end of it, you could also say, and hey, like, can you look at this?
mm,
Look at your tone of voice. Can you look at how you get angry quickly? Can you
mm,
look at how you disconnect from me? Can you please look at those things? And
mm.
because you've set him up to win, he's going to be much more available for that request, if that
Sure.
makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in all ownership, I don't want to hear what he has to say about it. I'm devastated. I'm triggered. I probably need to go for a walk until
Yeah.
I can come and speak with that level of respect and set him up to win in a way
Yeah.
that he can receive, so then I can make my request and that he can receive it. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and the level of self-awareness that takes on us is, it's big boy and big girl pants, right? And that is being devotional to love. Like most people won't think about it, but
mm,
when you have urgency in your body, anybody, right? We have urgency in our body. We need to tell them what fucking assholes they are, right? We need to get it out. They need to hear what I have to say. We
yeah,
can almost bet that it's not going to end well, right?
yeah, yeah,
So being devotional to love means, okay, I'm going to go regulate my own nervous system. I'm not going to stuff what I feel. I'm going to be a pillow.
yeah, yeah.
Beat a pillow for 5 minutes. Don't knock beating a pillow. Even just like sitting your partner down and going, hey, I need to beat this pillow for a second before I tell you
Hang
anything.
tight. I'll talk to you in a sec. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk to you in a second. And then you just beat on the pillow,
Yeah.
hands up in the air, hands down, hands up in the air, hands down. And you just like, and you get it out, you get it out, you get it out. And then you turn to him and say, okay, now can I share what I'm upset about? Like even that's devotion to love. Anything you can do
Mm.
to bring your nervous system out of the sympathetic fight or flight,
Yeah.
freeze,
Yeah.
right? And into a more conscious, sacred, spiritual approach, right?
Mm.
Is a devotion to love, right?
Yeah.
Anytime you apologize in the way I just described, that's a devotion to love,
Yeah.
right?
Wow.
Because you're letting go of needing to be right or needing to be heard,
Mm.
um, to set your partner to help you guys get back to love faster.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're speaking, I'm replaying the different fights in my head. I think I do a very good job of doing fawn, fight or flees. I do fawn.
Too.
And so I can like
A lot of women do that. A lot of women do that.
I do suppress the anger because that would make my dad even angrier. And then I go into like, I'm not in my heart, I'm in my head. And then I'm like strategizing, what question can I ask to understand why he was just such a jerk? So I could understand, so I could somehow not have that happen. I get to go into all of this strategy. And by the time the question comes out of my mouth, it sounds very accusational, manipulative, like there's no way he can win. Because I'm
Yeah.
like, why did you do that? Well, he's just going to justify. And then I go, see, they're justifying. But I set him up to justify, right?
Yeah.
Um, so it's not really me hitting a pillow. It's me like breaking into complete sobbing.
Yeah. So
At
how
the
about
dinner table with friends, that's not going
yes,
to work. So it's like, yeah.
this is art, right?
Mhm.
And science. I mean, nonviolent communication, imago dialogue, Terry
Yeah.
Real has beautiful work on this. I mean, there's a lot of really good therapeutic
Mm.
processes for this.
Right.
But the one I always like is I know you don't mean to hurt me.
Nice. Yeah.
I know you never want to hurt me. And
And which is true.
which is true. And when you said this thing, I
Mm.
thought, ouch. I
Yeah.
thought, I thought, why would he say that? That was really hurtful. I thought, what a fucking jerk he is right now. I thought, da 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 da, right? I felt like hurt. No, I felt devastated. I felt da 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 da. And I wanted to scratch your eyes out. I wanted to da 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 da. But just even doing a very simple nonviolent communication piece like that
Yeah. Yeah.
gives this storm that you are a
Yeah.
little bit of structure,
Yeah.
and lets him hold it, right?
Mm.
Because it's like oh, and this is really hard for women to get. But think of energy's easy for y'all.
Mm.
Anybody who's a highly feminine man, right? This is not gender specific, but
Right.
those of you who identify with the feminine have more energy moving through your body, just more energy all the time, more energy, more energy. That's why we love you. That's why we're attracted to you. It's all those things, right?
Mm.
And so the masculine partner, if he is a masculine partner, has less capacity to hold that energy dependent on how much nervous system, yogic, meditative training he's done in his life.
Right.
So if you just bring a lot of energy and you're just the feminine storm, and he doesn't have the training, right, that David Data talked about, which very, 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 this is the thing David doesn't say.
Mm.
Nobody, hardly anybody has the kind of training to just handle a feminine storm that's bringing criticism and knives and character assassinations, like very few men.
Mm.
After years and years of practice, I still have a limit, right? And
Mm.
so if his nervous system gets tripped, it's like a circuit breaker,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
push, you can't pump that much energy through the system without it going, and the circuit breaker is his defensiveness, and the
Yeah.
circuit breaker is his leaving the scene
Yeah. Yeah.
or sometimes going silent. That you can notice in your masculine partner. Also happens the other way around, of course. If a man's just dumping his anger on you, right? Your nervous system only can take so much.
Yeah.
So devotion to love is understanding what our partner's nervous system can take,
Yeah.
not expecting their nervous systems to go from It's like expecting somebody to go from 145 to 200, in a week of working out. It's just not going to happen. And
Yeah.
if I'm expecting your nervous system to be able to handle a flood of energy,
Yeah.
then I'm setting you up to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
See you next week on Intimate Conversations. Get out there and make love to life.
Pretty amazing interview, huh? Part 1. Wasn't it incredible right out of the gate? Because I hadn't had him on the show for about 8 years. And I said, what's something along the lines of what was the most meaningful thing that's happened since we connected last? He didn't skip a beat, and he went right into losing Claire. I so respect his ability to be vulnerable and real and authentic and feel and share. I chose not to say anything about Gabriel because I still have a chance to see Gabriel. Haven't spoken to him in over 4 years, but there's still a chance. And I allowed listening to him and I can't even imagine what it took to be such a committed father, great father, inclusive father, and have your heart completely crushed and lose your child and take the time to grieve and share about her, about their life, and about his devotion to her, to love, to parenthood, all of it. It really helped me put things into perspective. It's really beautiful that we can be inspired by him, how to live fully, how to feel deeply, how to be devoted to love. So part 2 will be coming up soon. Please go to johnwineland.com. Check out that embodied relationship experience platform. Check out his teacher training. Get his book if you haven't. Get it on Audible too if you haven't. He's just such a gift to humanity, isn't he? Allow whatever occurred, as in that interview that's touched you, to move you into action today. And get ready for part 2 coming up. And if there's anything that I can be of support, anything that my version of intimacy, sometimes we need a masculine practitioner, and sometimes we need a female practitioner. Sometimes the wound that we're dealing with is so beautifully healed when we're in the presence of a noble man like John. And sometimes the wound that needs to be healed is from the conscious feminine. So we got you covered between the two of us. So reach out to either of us if we can be there for you. Know that you're loved. Know that we believe in you. Know that we're grateful that you were with us for this podcast. And get ready for part 2 coming up soon. Much love.